I want people to have more time for what's important to them. It's my passion. I spent so much of my life not having time for what was important that I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to solve it. I wanted to be the answer for how do I do this? And to me, that's what a thought leader does is they makes the world a better place because their thought leadership has been tested and it's tried and it's true. So, yes, I love having a best-selling book, and yes, I love having a TEDx, but for me, the joy the joy comes when somebody steps out of my seminar or somebody who I'm consulting with says to me, "Wow, in a couple of weeks, my life has changed. I now have time for what's important. I'm calmer, I'm clearer." To me, that's where the joy comes in.
Peggy, welcome to Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. We love to kick off this podcast with a big question, and that's going to be if I handed you a magic wand today, what would you like to see changed in the world?
I wish I knew that busyness does not equate to success. That actually, when you slow down, when you do less, you achieve more because you're more focused. You're not burnt out. You're not running in a lot of directions and you're not burning down your relationships. So for me, I wish I understand that busyness doesn't equate to being successful.
It's a pretty powerful message. I think there's probably a few people out there listening and watching that would like to know that as well. What is it about this message that resonates with you, Peggy? And is that
Yeah.
something you've learned now?
Yeah, I mean, our hustle society, they tell us that busyness is good, right? It's a status symbol, it's a sign of success. That doctor's so busy, I can't get in for 7 months, but he must be really good. My next door neighbor, he leaves at 7 a.m. and doesn't come back till 7 p.m. Rock star. And then there's the other part of it is I'm so busy, I don't have time for anyone. My best friend, Paula, she's got a new house, a new dog, a new job, and there's no time for Peggy. So busyness has a ripple effect, but mostly for me, I just kept on churning and burning. I was in corporate America for about 25 years and it was always how can I do more? How can I do more? How can I do more? And raising the bar. And then I had a series of these not so fun wake up calls that caused me just to stop and slow down and say, hey, what's going on in your life? And how can you make things different? I got really kind of obsessed with what I call the wake up calls that happen when we're busy and how we need to lean into them, feel them, and realize that they are wake up calls. So, for example, I come home from work one day and I'm exhausted and ravenous. So I open the cupboard to find anything I can to eat. I grab a bag of stale pistachio nuts, and my cat's pulling on my leg. And he's basically saying, Mommy, you haven't fed me for over 10 hours either. I feed him. Next thing I know, I look up and my cat's throwing up pistachio nuts. And I realize I just ate cat food for dinner. Okay, so that sounds funny now, but that for me was the first of many wake-up calls where it was like, well, yeah, it sounds really funny, but I remember thinking to myself at that time that these nuts, they're salty, they're stale. I better get to the store and get some new ones. But I didn't. I was on autopilot. And this is what happens when we're busy. We go into autopilot and we stop thinking. And for me, what happened, it was, that happened, and then about 7 months later, my husband, who I thought we had amazing marriage with, just looked at me and he said, "I'm done. I'm done being married. I don't know, we don't spend any time together. I feel so far apart from you. I'm done." And then about a year after that, I had a stress-related heart attack because I was not gonna let being a single career woman slow me down. No siree. I had failed at a marriage, so I was going to get spot on with getting the rest right. So all of this stuff, it happens and we pay a price and we don't normally pay attention to it. And for me, that got me to really lean into market research and to understand the data. I had worked in healthcare for 25 years, data driven industry where data rules. And so I wanted to understand this thing that I call time poverty, because let's face it, we love being busy, so I don't want to call it busyness because everybody loves being busy. So I call it time poverty. And nobody wants to get to the end of their day saying, gee, I didn't have time for what's important.
Wow. Wow. Yes. I think we need to talk about hustle culture and the problems that it causes because I don't think this is a topic we talk about enough. And when you were saying that, I thought, oh my God, I'm so guilty of saying, if somebody asks me, hey, how you doing? My answer often is busy. Oh, I'm so busy. I've got so much going on. Yeah. And while that's true, I don't think I want to own that. And I don't think I want to say that anymore because when you phrase it into the time poverty part, yeah, that puts a whole different spin on it. And it does make you realize, am I so busy? What am I so busy doing? Am I busy balancing my family and work and all the other commitments that I have as a single mom? I appreciate that side of things. Yeah, this is important. Let's talk about hustle culture. Why is there such a strong hustle culture? Especially with young people. I think there's so much pressure on young people to succeed and to, just go after everything and figure out life so soon and so early. And it puts a lot of pressure. And how do we balance that? How do we make sure we don't become poverty?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to spend a moment just talking a little bit
Yeah.
about the stats because they really set the stage for all of this. And 95% of working individuals have such overstuffed schedules, they don't have time for what's important and they don't know how. And that's the big thing. Many people realize that, this is too much. It's not working for me, but they don't know how to get off that hamster wheel. And I know for me, I was in the same boat. So I spent the last 10 years trying to figure that out. How do we get off the hamster wheel? What is that combination of things? And through a lot of research, what I learned is that we spend way too much on low value things. Maybe we're on social media. Maybe we're in the email rabbit hole. Maybe we're multitasking. Like multitasking is great, but the reality of multitasking, according to Harvard Business Review, is it takes 2.5 times longer and we make 50% more mistakes, more errors. So, like all these myths about run, 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 they don't equate to quality of work. They destroy human relationships. Only 61% of us have time for basic self care. So, what does that mean? That means like going getting your teeth cleaned, eating a meal, getting a good night's sleep, the foundations of mental power. We forget that when we put self-care on the back burner, we also hinder our minds because then our brain doesn't function at full capacity. And so there's just so many aspects to it when you look at the data and you realize you're not helping yourself, you're not helping your productivity, your health, your happiness, your relationships. All the stats really look awful. And so for me, being a data driven person looking at the stats, I really focused on finding a better way. And that's when I got into this peak performance framework, or I call it busy busting framework. And using that as a methodology to get back to what's important, and really having a discipline, having something I could go to that would really guide my actions and my steps.
Wow, Peggy. So this methodology that you've created, and thank you for sharing all that data. It's really key. This methodology that you've created then helps a person to unwind the busyness cycle.
It helps a person escape time poverty. So thanks for asking that question. And let me just give you a little bit more about what this framework looks like. There are three steps in it. Step one is about subtraction. We all spend a lot of time on low value activities. So I worked with an industrial psychologist and I worked with a lot of people from HR to develop a tool that measures 21 low value activities. And it could be something like interruptions. You let interruptions, maybe the phone rings, maybe the doorbell rings. The other day I was working on an Excel spreadsheet and I was so proud of myself. I was a moving and a grooving and doing what if formulas and I was focused. And then I hear a knock on my door and it's my husband. I'm like, it's my husband. I got to answer. So I did. I let him in and he told me that there was no ketchup in the house for dinner tonight for hamburgers. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't really care about hamburgers and not having ketchup right now. What I care about is my spreadsheet. Go away. I go away. And then I went back to my spreadsheet and it took me 21 minutes to refocus. And that's what we call a switching task. And that's what happens whether you're switching between apps, whether you're letting interruptions in, whether you're looking at your phone, all of that. And there are so many things just like that we get stuck into. Even the email rabbit hole, you're just going to look at one, right? And then the one leads to two and three or four. Or what about overstuffing your schedule? You've got back to back, and I'm so good and I'm getting a lot done. And then you get to the end of your day and you're like, I still have work to do. I had no time to do my real work. So, step one is about subtracting those lower value activities, making room for what's important. Step two is about what I call mojo making. I wrote my first book about happiness and the neuroscience of happiness. And what I learned is that when we are happy, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree and sends transmitters to our body, basically giving us more energy, giving us more focus, putting us in a better mood, fighting off chronic disease. We're more charismatic, all of that good stuff. So I tell people don't wait for happiness to come flying into you. Society tends to think that happiness is it's a destination, it's a place. I will be happy when I get the job, when I get married, when I have a baby. But actually, you can get that power, the superpowers of happiness, this emotion, just by doing little micro moments, small little activities. Every day at 11 a.m., no matter where in the world I am, I eat 3 pieces of chocolate. And I intentionally smell them with my eyes closed just to get the aroma and to calm me down. And then I will literally eat these pieces of chocolate slowly and carefully, just focusing on the taste of it. And it's crazy how such a small habit like that, it's like pushing the reset button.
I'm definitely adopting that one, Peggy, starting tomorrow. And 11 o'clock in the morning. So tell me about that. Was there a reason for the timing? Is it something to do with, you're almost halfway through the day or?
Hey there, sorry for the interruption, but if you're a woman entrepreneur ready to raise your profile, expand your reach, and start being seen as the expert you already are, we have a challenge for you. Vicki and I have created a free guide called the LinkedIn to Latte Method. Check it out in the link below. It's designed especially for women who are done playing small and are ready to attract opportunities, clients, and increase your visibility. No tech overwhelm, no awkward call DMs, just clear, authentic strategy that works. So download the free LinkedIn to Latte guide below, take the challenge, and start turning your brilliance into real opportunities. Now, back to the episode.
No, I happiness rituals, I think every couple of hours we really need. I mean, there are so many studies that say after 90 minutes we need to push refresh that will work much more effectively and be more error-free if we push refresh. So, I try to take little breaks every couple of hours, but sometimes I just get so focused. So I set my alarm for 11 and 3:30 because those are the times that I'm usually moving and grooving and I'm not thinking about taking a break. I'm thinking about finishing what I'm working on. And so when my phone goes ding ding ding, I just stop and I'm like, "Okay, take a break." And it's crazy how much I can focus on what I'm doing. I just feel energized. So, couple of times a day, it's great. We normally do it in the morning. We get up. For me, I just hang out with my big fat cat. He's 24 pounds. He's just a lovable guy, and we'll just hang out. And even though he can't talk to me, we just look at each other, and we know we got each other's back. And it's just a morning ritual that puts me in perspective.
So you eat the chocolate and he eats the pistachio?
That was the cat before this one, and,
Oh,
that's it kind of reminds me of a funny story because that was my first cat, Dazzle. My
mhm.
second cat is called Oliver, so I'm always talking about Dazzle and the pistachio nut story, and sometimes I change it into Oliver and I transpose, and my husband will look at me and he'll be like, "Dazzle is no longer with us. Oliver's our cat." So I'm talking about the first cat.
I was also very pleased to hear that you have another husband. That's important too. Good on you. I love it. Stories of success. So you talked about the two things. Did we get to the third?
We didn't. The third is what I call values vibing, and it's about how to align the decisions you make about how you spend your time with what's important. We get so busy, and then things that we really value that are really, really important kind of get pushed down to the bottom. So I decided to get really curious about values because everybody says, I want to live a well-lived life. I want my cup to be full. And the measure of that is that my life aligns with my values. But it's funny because values is such a big word. People struggle to identify what their values are. It's this tough,
Mhm.
really hard thing to identify. So I interviewed about 12,000 people to ask them, what do
Wow.
you have in your life when you end your day and your cup is full? What do those values look like? And I came up with an infrastructure of four. One of them is what I call energy management, which is really nothing more than self-care and physical, emotional, and just, making sure you're getting a good night's sleep, you're feeding your brain, you're exercising, you're giving yourself that time. That's the first value. Human connection is the second. We certainly lost sight of that during COVID, and we think we're past that, but actually, we're not. The numbers don't show us. There still is a loneliness epidemic that the Surgeon General says is equivalent to people who are lonely smoking 13 cigarettes a day. I mean, think about what that would do to your body. So people and energy management and human connection are really, really important. The third one is growth. And I love talking about growth because it reminds me of my dad. My dad was an immigrant. He was in a concentration camp. He came over to the United States and he always used to tell me in his German accent, Toots, a day without learning something is a lost opportunity. And I always say, Dad, I don't get that. I don't understand that. And he always used to tell me, when you learn to flex your resiliency muscle. You learn that you can do hard things. You've learned that you've done them before. It's like there's freedom in learning new things because then you get self-reliant. So that's why growth
Right.
is the third one. And then the fourth one is authenticity. And I lately have been turning this one upside down because I do think that we've gotten into a little bit of a me society, not so much with women because we're caregivers. So we're always taking, thinking about everybody else around us before us. But for me, authenticity is really about being open minded and more compassionate to a different perspective, a different approach to somebody who doesn't look like me, doesn't act like me, and knowing that we're better together, and when we all lean in and work together, there's usually a third solution that's the best of all of them. So those are the four values. And what I do, it's so simple because, let's face it, subtracting a low value activity, that's easy. It's measurable. You can add in happiness rituals. That's easy. That's measurable. How do you measure your values? So what I
Mm.
do is I write down my four values on a piece of paper: energy management, human connection, growth, and authenticity. I just grade myself A through F. And I came back from a trip last week, so I didn't have a lot of time for working out, and it was hard for me to get my meals and self-care, all of that. So I gave myself a low grade on my energy management. So today I'm going to make sure I really focus in on my energy, and it's just as simple as that. I really believe that micro stepping equals macro results. And we're all looking for major changes, but when we take these small little steps, it results in really big changes. And it's so much easier for us to do.
Yeah, and it removes the overwhelm of it, right? Because it can feel very overwhelming to change a habit or to change something that we're so accustomed to doing, like being busy and keeping ourselves super occupied, versus slowing down and being more intentional. And I love the intentionality of all of your values. But I'd love to dig into authenticity because I think that's a really key one that a lot of us struggle with is how to show up authentically, especially now in this time of sort of the social media perfectionism and the, age of AI, fake things. And so talk a little bit more about authenticity and what that means to you and how we can work on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna talk about it in terms of making personal judgment calls that work for you. Now I'm gonna get really raw and authentic. I'm in my 60s. I'm a speaker, I'm a coach. I'm competing with women in their 40s who look a whole bunch better than me. But I choose not to wear makeup. I choose not to pretend to look or be like somebody I'm not. This is who I am. I have a lot to offer. I've got age, I've got wisdom, and I'm not going to waste my time putting on false eyelashes and putting on makeup and doing all that stuff. For me, it doesn't work. And it means I get to spend time on what's important. And then I'd like to talk about AI. When I grew up, there were typewriters. So this AI stuff, I tried to ignore it for a long time. It intimidated the heck out of me. I didn't want to lean in. But when I tried it a little bit, I realized that there are uses for AI that really help me manage my time and help me think of things that I don't normally think of. And I know the other day I was trying to write an email to somebody, and I knew what I wanted to say and words like it, but I couldn't quite figure out the right words. So I just plopped it into AI, and it came back with a couple of phrases that nailed it. Saved me time.
Mm, yeah. Maybe that's a better approach to think of it that way. How do we use the tools to make our life easier and work on that time management, energy management piece, right?
Well, here's the thing. Time management is a $10 billion industry, okay? But 95% of us don't have time for what's important. So we keep on looking for time management as the solution. But if you just look at the facts and the data, time management, there are pieces and parts of time management that are brilliant. I'm a big time blocker. When I've got big projects, I will block time out to make sure that I get a little bit done on those big projects. So I'm not saying that time management isn't useful, but I don't think it's the end all be all because we end up overstuffing our time and then we still have no time left for what's important.
Yeah. I think it's a big, I mean, it's obviously a really big conversation and so relevant in across every industry, particularly for entrepreneurs, which is mainly the people who listen and watch this podcast. Because sometimes we feel like it's all on us. You know, we if we don't do it, it won't get done. So I imagine there's some element of delegation, and that's all part of time management as well. But I'd really encourage people to have a look at your book, Peggy, just released this year. So it's hot off the press, really, very current. And the book is Beyond Busyness: How to Achieve More by Doing Less, which is what you've been talking about. And what really struck me as well, Peggy, aside from the incredible topic and the way you present it and all the data that's gone into it, is that you have a review from Seth Godin. That's just like a cherry on the top, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, this book was something in the making for many years, and I worked really hard on it. And I wanted the reviews, but I also wanted the opinions of people that I so respect. And so I spent time trying to get those, and it wasn't easy. I reached out to Seth Godin so many times before he actually, wrote a note. And at the end of my note, he says, "You know what? I've decided I'm no longer giving book reviews." Um, and Mel Robbins, I love her Let Them, and I just love her, and I didn't have a hope and a heck of getting her, but I stayed at it and I kept on writing her and I kept on writing her and I kept on writing her. And I remember the day that her review came through, I didn't see it till late at night. I was working on a project. I ran into the middle of the street in the middle of the night saying, "Mel Robbins just endorsed my book." And it was like such a big deal for me. And it just goes to show that if you focus on what's important, that it is doable.
Yeah, that is resilience right there, the never give up factor. And I madly respect Mel Robbins as well. So congratulations on
Thank you.
that. That is huge. Speaking of huge, you've also graced the TEDx stage, which
Yeah.
is something a lot of people aspire to. Tell us that story.
Yeah, that was crazy. I actually wanted to do a TEDx for the longest time, and I filled out application after application after application. And then I got two yeses at the same time. One was in Africa, one was in Boston, and they were a day apart. Impossible, right? No way I could do both. So I begged the guy in Africa because I really wanted to do one in front of people that just were different than me. And I really wanted the experience of going to Africa. But Boston is where my son lives. And I also wanted to speak where my son was going to be in the audience. So that one kind of won. But doing a TEDx is definitely a challenging thing. It takes the average person 89 applications before they get accepted. And what people don't recognize about a TEDx is that if you want to do a good one, you really need to get your message down to 12 minutes. Even 18 minutes is too much. So for me, the struggle was, wow, I actually got to live the title of my book, right? How to achieve more by doing less. And I worked really, really hard and I thought I had it down. And I had a bunch of speaker friends. And a couple of days before the actual TEDx, I did my what I had practiced, which I thought was going really well, and I had taped it and everything. And my team came back to me and said, "Well, we think you should make this, and this changes." And one of them was, "Don't use slides, just get up there and speak." So 3 days before I'm rewriting my TEDx, memorizing it, but not trying to memorize it, but just trying to kind of know the different shifts in conversation. And so I get there that day, right? And they look at me and they like, Peggy, you're going to be first. And I'm like,
No pressure.
first, first. Hey, I want to watch somebody else do it before I get there. No, you're going first. So, they're like 15 minutes till you're on, and I freak out. I am so freaked out. I am so nervous. So I'm like, what can I do to get out of my nerves? And I did something that I do all the time. It's my secret magical trick. And that is I turn upside down. I do a headstand. All the blood runs through my head, and I can't really think about much else besides like focus on your headstand or else you're gonna fall. And that's what did it to me. I walked out and bright lights, lots of people, everything. And I'm like, no, I really believe in what I'm saying. So I'm gonna say it with passion. And my TEDx got a couple of million views. So that was pretty cool.
It's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. And we're going to include the link in the show notes to this because I want all of our listeners and viewers to see it. And wow, that's incredible to think that it was just 3 days before that you were changing things up. Whew, good on you. Good on you. Can we just talk a bit about what that gave you? Because, being a thought leader is a really important thing, particularly for women, we believe. And not only does it help you cut through the marketing noise, um, it it just positions you in such a way that you can attract opportunities versus always chasing them down. How has writing a book, being a speaker, and particularly TEDx speaker, um, changed things for you and your business?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the notoriety that changed things. I think it's the work and going deep in the work and testing and reorganizing and rethinking and being relentless until I had a model that worked. Period. End of discussion. And I can honestly say people that use my model will get 5 to 7 hours back. On average, people get 5 to 7 hours back each week. Who doesn't want that? So for me, it was like truly, I want people to have more time for what's important to them. It's my passion. I spent so much of my life not having time for what was important that I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to solve it. I wanted to be the answer for how do I do this? And that to me is the difference. It's not about being eloquent in what you say, but it's about if you recognize a problem that a lot of people have, try to fix it. That's to me the thought leadership is, having the courage to do the research, to try different things, to work with thousands and thousands of people to continue to test until you have something that like works. And to me, that's what a thought leader does is they makes the world a better place because their thought leadership has been tested and it's tried and it's true. So, yes, I love having a best-selling book, and yes, I love having a TEDx, but for me, the joy comes when somebody steps out of my seminar or somebody who I'm consulting with says to me, "Wow, in a couple of weeks, my life has changed. I now have time for what's important. I'm calmer, I'm clearer." To me, that's where the joy comes in.
So give us that piece of advice for the, younger version of you who was figuring out their passion, who are maybe solving that problem, who have done the research, done the work, but they haven't had the courage yet to write their book or step out on the stage. What a piece of advice would you give them?
There's something to be said for just putting one foot in front of another and doing something and recognizing that you're doing something hard and just getting it done is success. It's not about really what comes afterward. It's in the work, it's in the learning curve, it's in the growth. And for me, writing a book, doing the TEDx, it gave me clarity real
Mhm.
clarity on how to describe my thought leadership to other people. And so in many ways, the book, the TEDx, the speaking, the workshops, all of that is a conduit to helping people and making the world what I think is a better place. Because let's face it, women women have the weight of the world on our shoulders, and it's just really hard being a woman these days, to have a successful career, to manage a family, to take care of yourself. It's just challenging. And so I love working with women and helping them, especially in their second chapters of life. I was in corporate America for a very long time. And then I pivoted and started a woman's nonprofit. And then I pivoted again and became a speaker and an author and a coach. And, it's like you can do that. That's okay. You can say, I've had enough of one thing and move into something else and own it.
You are just music to my ears, Peggy. It is a delight hearing you talk. And we share, a woman in entrepreneurship now, particularly in her second, we say second act, second chapter, they're leaning in, had that whisper inside them that they were closing their eyes to because other things had to be made. And now here we are in a room talking about your passion. Know that it's possible. And you can make time to do it. You can create space. Like what you're talking about, I, in my words, it's about creating space for what you're really called to do, what's important to you. Those things that are important are the things that we'll be thinking about and grateful for when we're in our last days.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that is giving yourself a pat on the back to know everything you've done has led up to this. All that scurry, all that hustle, all those lessons learned, all those failures, all those wins have led you to where you are today, and you needed those to be you. So, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I finally get to do what I want to be doing, but you needed to be doing what you were doing to become the person you are today and to have that knowledge, to have that power.
Yeah, I like to say you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the value in sort of doing more research, reading more books, listening to TEDx talks, these things, because when people are sharing their years of wisdom, their mistakes, their authentic, what they've been through, you can learn from that without having to always go through it yourself too. So I think that's kind of a key message, especially to younger entrepreneurs. Like this is a fascinating, challenging, incredible ride to go on, but you can learn from others who are ahead of you that have that wisdom. So you don't have to have the same pitfalls along the way. You can just learn from theirs, gather their knowledge, and grow yourself. So this is like such a great message for everyone to hear about how to manage and live in your values and be on purpose and yet not burn ourselves out and hit those things where you have to have that experience of the stress, the heart attacks, the things that happen, the pistachio incidents of your own life. Like we don't have to have those. We can learn from others. So Peggy, thanks for sharing your stories because I think it's key to helping others.
Yeah, I love to encourage women especially to think of one mantra and just keep on saying it to yourself. I say every morning, and I kind of started saying this many years ago when I was going through challenges. I used to say, I am okay. I have everything I need, and I got this no matter what. And I say that before I get out of bed to remind myself. I say it out loud. And some mornings, I say it multiple times until I really, really feel it. Like, I got this. I got this. I got this. and I just think that there are so many simple things that we can do to step into our power, and that, this small little micro stepping, it just really makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. And taking those small steps of action, one after another, can lead to the big things.
Yes, Laura, you are so right. Micro steps equal macro results.
It's the 1% theory, right? Just 1% better every day. And I love the mantra thing. I think that's really key. I think that helps a lot of people. And especially when you repeat it, you just start believing it. So, is your advice find your own mantra?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
find your own rituals. I speak a lot. And I just spoke in front of Johnson and Johnson, a household product, a great people. But right before I spoke, I got nervous. And so I have go-to mantras, go-to things that I do. One of my favorite things is a very old song. It's Maroon 5's and it's called Sugar. And it shows when Maroon 5 went and crashed all these weddings and ended up surprising all these brides and grooms. And it's really a clash of, you just see the surprise and the delight of bride and groom and parents and the people that were at the wedding, one right after another. And that's what I do before I get on stage, is I look at the joy and I'm like, just give joy, helpers high.
Being of service makes so much difference when you can get out of your own head, stop thinking about you and how you're feeling and your nerves and all that stuff, and start thinking about how do you serve the people in front of you? How do you share your message that will help others? And your message clearly will help an awful lot of people, because this is a conversation we've had so many times on this podcast about balance and how do you strike it, and how to, as women, we juggle all the things, and we're nurturers and caregivers, like you said, and we're dealing with kids, and especially in our second act we're dealing with teenage kids plus aging parents at the same time trying to grow a business. It's a lot to juggle, and we often, who do we forget? Us. Who's
Yeah.
last on the list?
Yeah, and who wants to get to the end of their life being second?
Yeah, right,
You know,
exactly.
I don't mind being second in almost everything, but not when it comes to living my life.
Thank you, Peggy. Yes, Peggy. That's it. That's it. Let's put ourselves first so that we can help others. Because we remember that, that, like they tell you on a plane, put your oxygen mask on first. We've got to take care of ourselves first. Such a strong message today, such an important one. Like Vicki mentioned, we'll share your stuff in the show notes so people can connect with you and learn from you and get brave and courageous like you, and on those stages and living in that purpose and living that lifestyle that we all deserve to have in our second act in entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura and Vicky. You should be proud of the work you do, because you bring people on and help guide them and give them a resource on the how-tos, and it's really good.
Thank you. We're here to build a world of resilient entrepreneurs and a better world for all of us. And people like you just get on the stage and help. So we thank you so much for your time today.
You are quite welcome.